is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson on Demand.
Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. Right now, the Republicans are all scrambling to decide whether or not they will back the Paul Ryan plan. Is his plan the way forward? Now, it gets pretty complex. Unless you've read the entire thing and really researched it and studied it, you probably can't know every little bit and piece. But as a general overview, I like some of it not as much. I think Paul Ryan has the general idea, and he may even in his heart and what he really believes recognize that his plan doesn't go far enough. But maybe he thinks he can't get any more done because of politics. I mean, as it is, it's already a hot-button issue. Should we raise the debt ceiling level? Should we follow his plan? It's going to be difficult enough to get his plan passed within his party, let alone bipartisan. So is it the way forward? I go to now Richard Hart, professor of economics at Miami University and former teacher of Paul Ryan. How are you, Rich?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So where was he your student?
At Miami University.
Oh, okay.
Paul was a student in the early 90s, and he was an econ major, and he took an intermediate macro theory course from me.
So have you studied his plan at all?
I have, actually. I've read it.
What do you think of it?
I think it's a good plan. I'm inclined to agree with you that I think he would probably like to go further, but political constraints sort of prevent him from going further. I actually like his Medicare proposals, and I think what's the best thing about the two best things about Paul's program. One is this debt crisis. He tackles this debt crisis. Something we've got to do something for this explosive growth and entitlement programs, and he does something about this crazy tax code that we have. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many different angles right now to the economy, Rich. First of all, Professor, we've got. Let's talk about the Medicare part of it and his plan. He bravely, and I applauded him for being willing to even discuss that and write a plan when most people know that's, one of the third rails, that and Social Security and Medicaid are the other ones. But those are other things that need to be kind of looked at too.
Oh yeah. His Medicare plan, the Medicare plan, according to Democrats. No, I agree completely. Doesn't touch anybody. Keeps the plan intact for people that are currently 55 years age going forward. So it doesn't touch anybody for the next 10 years. By contrast, it's Obamacare that cuts Medicare. It cuts Medicare by $500 billion over the next 10 years, and all of these cuts are cuts to reimbursements to doctors. So what you're going to have with Obamacare is you're going to have the elderly are going to have much worse care under Obamacare. You're going to get a lot of doctors that simply refuse to see Medicare patients because they can't cover the cost with these lower and lower reimbursement rates, and it's Obamacare that sets up this unelected 15-person panel that really is there to ration health care.
So under Paul's plan, let me understand this too. It first of all is not going to affect anybody that is on it now. It affects people
anybody
down the road.
That's 55 years of age or older is not affected. Okay. And then for people under 54, what his plan does is it moves to it's sort of a voucher system, and so what the government does is that the government they help individuals pay for this insurance. Each individual, on average, receives an $8,000 voucher. It's really a premium support, and then they use this $8,000 premium support to buy insurance. Now, the Democrats have argued that what this does is the way they buy this insurance, they just have to go out and find insurance companies. That's not the way it works. What happens under his plan is Medicare negotiates different types of plans with insurance companies. And so Medicare will offer a whole host of plans, and then individuals use this voucher system, plus extra money if they want. They use this voucher system to buy a plan that Medicare offers. So individuals don't have to negotiate with Medicare. Medicare can shop across state lines. You can't exclude, if you're going to be a participant in this, and most of the large insurance companies would, you can't exclude individuals with pre-existing conditions. If you want to do that, you can't be part of this Medicare program. The plan also, the voucher is larger the lower your income. So high-income people get smaller vouchers. It makes sense. High-income people are in a better position to pay for their health care. High-income people get smaller vouchers. Low-income people get the size of the voucher is larger. People who have large medical expenses get larger vouchers. And so the argument is that this competition. Now, the Congressional Budget Office, when they scored this, they said, well, over the next 10 years after this is implemented, individuals will be paying higher insurance premiums. They'll pay more of their health care. But, that's what we need to do. How are you going to reduce the cost if you don't create these incentives for individuals to not, go run to the hospital every time they stub a toe, which is you have an incentive to do when you have third-party payers.
See, I like the idea of injecting the recipient, those of us who are getting the care or have the insurance, into the middle of it, because I think somehow we lost it, Professor, when we went from I'm going to go to the doctor and give him $100 or whatever it is for an office visit, and then I would buy insurance for, catastrophic coverage. When we shifted where I no longer know how much an office visit is, that's taken out of the mix. It's all done,
through third-party payers.
Is horrible.
Terrible. It's terrible. And this is the reason that look, if included in my homeowner's insurance policy was to paint the house, I'd get my house painted every year.
That's true. Why wouldn't you, right? It just reduces the incentive for people to be careful in their plan. This is what the competition would do. And look, if something's not done about these entitlements, we're headed to sort of financial Armageddon. I think this is a factor. This is one of the factors that's having huge negative effect on the performance of the economy today. You got these business firms looking to the future. They're seeing that President Obama doesn't seem to be committed to solving this debt crisis, and so they're sitting there saying, "Well, and President Obama keeps talking about he wants to raise taxes on the productive elements of society, the small businesses who produce 70% of the jobs." With all this talk of wanting to increase taxes, why would they invest invest in expanding their businesses, and why would they invest in expanding their businesses if they think we're going to have another debt crisis? Professor, it's when I don't think this is scare tax, and I don't want to scare people, but I try to bring up some of this stuff to let them know the realities here. We are on path to become what Greece is going through right now in under 10 years. The reports I've seen say within 10 years, if we don't make some changes, our spending as a percent of GDP is going to be where Greece is now at about 120%, and that is disastrous.
It's actually, I think, worse than that.
Really? Wow.
If you look out under the current path of things, by 2025, the debt will be bigger than GDP. By 2080, it'll be 7 times GDP. That's just not. You're right. That's Greece. That's not sustainable. The economy, and we're going to start to see this quicker than we think with this quantitative easing. The Federal Reserve has been buying all the government bonds. In the last year, the Federal Reserve has bought 70% of all the debt that the federal government has issued, and this ends in June. The Chinese are not going to buy government bonds at a 0% of zero interest rate, and so. This is one of the things that I really. This was when Paul was a student. He always struck me as very creative, and it's sort of the signs of a real scholar. I'm a real scholar. they have the ability not only to pose interesting questions, but the creativity and circumspection and imagination to solve difficult problems. And I think this is what makes him such a terrific congressman. And solving some of these problems are not popular.
Talking with Professor Richard Hart from Miami University. Maybe you can help teach us something here, Professor. We always hear Keynesian economics, and I know it's based on some of the philosophies and ideas from the economist from Britain, John Maynard Keynes. But can you explain in a nutshell to people the idea behind it, why it isn't, why it's not a good idea?
Doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't work the way that these Keynesians would have us believe. The basic idea of Keynesian economics is, let's see if I can explain this in a simple way. Mm-hmm. Let's suppose that, let me use widgets. Let's suppose that you're a firm and you produce widgets.
Doc Thompson's widgets.
I'm a producer. You produce these widgets. You want people to buy these widgets. Okay? I'm a consumer. I buy a widget from you. When I buy a widget from you, it becomes food or clothes or whatever. The government buys widgets from you. When the government buys widgets from you, it becomes part of national defense, et cetera. You can buy widgets, and when you buy widgets, it becomes new plant and equipment that allows you to produce more widgets in the future. The essence of Keynes, so that what I buy is called consumption. What the government buys is called government spending, obviously, and then what you buy is investment. You buy it to build new plant and equipment so you can produce more widgets down the road. The essence of Keynesian economics is this. We go into recessions because for some reason Rich Hart wakes up and says, gee whiz, I don't want to buy as many widgets. I'm going to buy fewer widgets. So you look at, you're selling fewer widgets. So you start producing fewer widgets. God forbid you should lower the price of widgets. You start producing fewer widgets, and then you have to lay workers off because you're producing fewer widgets. So the essence of Keynesian economic policies, well, all we have to do is increase the demand for widgets. So how can we do that? Well, the government, this is what Obama's $800 billion stimulus package was. The government comes in and says, well, we're going to increase government spending by $500 billion. We're going to buy $500 billion more in widgets. We're going to give Rich Hart a $300 billion tax cut. And so I'm going to be buying a lot more widgets. You're going to be selling a lot more widgets, and this will increase economic activity and get us out of the recession. Well, that's fine and dandy, except it ignores a couple of things. Most important of which is ignores how do we pay for this increased government spending, and how do we pay for these tax cuts.
So help me make sure I understand this right. And I'm not sure I've ever summed this up, in a clear way on the air. If we get enough people that are supported by the government, and I don't mean just welfare, I mean everything, business, all of this stuff, at some point you reach whatever that is, 50%, 60, 80, 20, whatever the percentage is, where there's not enough people not on it to continue to infuse new capital and resources into the government to keep all the other people sustainable because they are not able to keep themselves sustained. Is that
no,
about right?
It's more subtle than that. Actually, it's this. What it is this: is when you're given all of this, transferring all this income to one group of individuals, another group of individuals has to pay for it. So, think of it. Let me go back to this tax cut. Suppose the government comes to me and says, Rich, we want you to buy more widgets, so we're going to cut your taxes by $200 billion. Well, and then I'm sitting there and say, well, how are they going to pay for this $200 billion? Well, they're going to borrow money. They're going to sell government bonds, right? You with me?
Yep.
And some to China normally. But look, the Chinese wouldn't buy these government bonds unless they thought the government was going to pay them back, pay off the bonds when they come due and meet the interest payments on the bonds. And how does the government do that? It's got to raise future taxes. So Keynesian economics would say this: we just gave Rich Hart a $200 billion tax cut, and he's going to go out and buy more widgets. These new theories that don't agree with this Keynesian approach would say this: we just gave Rich Hart a $200 billion tax cut, and then we told him, oh, by the way, you've got to pay this back tomorrow.
So they took out a loan in your name, and you had little say about the interest rate or anything else.
That's exactly right.
That's
what
trouble.
You can think of you can think of these government deficits are nothing more than a promise for higher future taxes, and it's no different from you taking out a loan loan at the bank. In effect, the government is borrowing on your behalf and then committing you to higher future taxes. So if somebody gives me $100 today and says, "Oh, but you got to pay me back tomorrow with interest," I'm not going to go rushing out buying widgets. I'm just going to hold on to that money, so I'll have it in order to. And so this is the reason this. And then you've got the same thing with the government spending. Government spending went up by $500 billion. They financed this by selling bonds, mostly to the Chinese. Well, that means somebody's taxes in the future have got to go up by $500 billion. And President Obama, the last 2 years, that's all he talked about. We need to raise taxes, raise taxes, raise taxes, raise taxes. Right. It's an interesting political strategy. I think, what the Republicans used to do is cut taxes, blow up the deficit and as a way of forcing Congress to reduce government spending. What the Democrats have done is increase government spending, lower taxes, blow up the deficit in an attempt, I think, to get the Republicans to vote for higher taxes.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the political, that's what ends up getting into the trouble. If you just laid it out in fact and reason or whatever, I think most people would understand it. But then you get all the politics and am I getting something? I don't, redistributive wealth and that. Before I let you go, Professor, I got to ask you, the debate of our time, at least right now, is raise the debt ceiling or not. Can we not raise the debt ceiling? Can we get away without doing it if they were willing to take their drastic cuts and do other things?
No, if you're willing to cut government spending, you can get away with it. I don't think there's any way that this Congress, Paul Rand, I think, would do it.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think that. Look, and of course the other thing, when you cut government spending, I think of cuts in government spending as signaling lower taxes in the future, and you're also freeing up resources for the private sector. That's where the jobs are created. But back to your original question, I don't think so. Although you look at these public opinion polls, and the public sort of talks out of both sides of the mouth. They don't want entitlements cut, and yet they want the government to not raise the debt limit. And I think the debt limit probably is going to get raised. I just hope the Republicans will stick to their guns and say, well, we are not going to raise this debt limit without a serious commitment to significant cuts in the size of government.
Professor Rich Hart from Miami University, I appreciate you joining me and laying that out. Fascinating stuff, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. You have a good day.
You too, sir. And you can find more information on the professor just by going to my blog at 700WLW.com. Doc Thompson on the big one, 700WLW. Some shocking news for you. The unemployment rate's at 9.1%. You got to remember that's just people filing for unemployment benefits. It's not all of the people that are unemployed. In that case, the number would be much, much higher. It's going in the wrong direction, which you may know. At one point, it was almost 10, then it slowly headed up to 8.9, then dropped back to 9.0. Now it's at 9.1. The unemployment rate, 9.1. The problem is it's actually much worse than that. The jobs that were created was 54,000 last month. This is what many people promoted. Well, at least we created 54,000 jobs. More than half of those jobs created last month came from one business. 30,000 of the 54,000 jobs created, which kept the unemployment rate from going even higher. More than half of them, 30,000 of the 54,000, were created by one company, McDonald's. They went on a huge hiring spree. They hired 30,000 people. They, at all different levels, they hired managers and workers and whatever. This was a big story a couple of months back that they were going to do it. Well, they did it. I didn't hear anybody talking about that. Now, some McDonald's jobs can be very good. If you're a manager, a district manager, or something like that, it's a very livable wage. In fact, you start getting up into a real nice living. McDonald's does well by their employees. And even at the lower end, yeah, you're probably more like the minimum wage in that. And probably more of the jobs created were more of the minimum wage type jobs or slightly higher. So they're fine jobs if you're part-time or you have other sources of income, or maybe your family does. McDonald's probably will not be hiring another 30,000 people next month. So we will lose that. We would have only created 24,000 jobs as opposed to 54,000 last month, which would have driven our unemployment rate theoretically even higher. funny, though, that McDonald's keeps getting attacked, though. Well, by people like the First Lady because of the quality of the food or whatever. Listen, McDonald's has done great things for America. It's an American institution. They provide a great product at a great price. They create jobs. And you still have the choice whether or not you want to go there. They created 30,000 jobs last month. You don't hear people promoting them. You hear people promoting the president. 9.1% unemployment. Would be higher if it wasn't for Mac America. It's Doc Thompson, 700 WLW.